All right, everybody, we are back. This is Creativity is the Cure. I am your host, Malcolm Moore, and today I have a very special guest, my new friend, Andy Toomey. How are you doing, Andy?
I am well. Thanks, Malcolm. Hello, everyone.
I am way out in the desert in Palmdale, California. Is it true you now live in Jacksonville, Florida?
I do.
How's the weather out there today? Kind of humid?
Well, it's a funny thing. I was born and raised in Boston, and I spent most of my adult life in and around New York City. And one thing I've really never liked is the cold.
Oh, yeah.
And finally, I gave it up. My wife and I sold our house and all of our stuff.
Yeah.
And traveled the world for a year. We went through 12 countries. Wow. 15 countries in 12 months.
Wow.
Yeah, definitely had quite the sabbatical. And just about when we were thinking about, well, we should start, considering settling down somewhere, and the phone rang. That was a job for her in Jacksonville.
Oh, there you go.
And my son went to Savannah College of Art and Design.
Oh,
Shout
fantastic.
out to SCAD people. Yeah, so we had been down this way. Jacksonville is more like South Georgia than North Florida. It's kind of got that low country, Spanish moss, live oaks, kind of swampy.
Yeah.
So that's my jam all the way. When people around here are like, oh, no, it's 98 degrees and 98% humidity. I'm like, we live in Florida. That's why we're here, dude. I will take 2 days like it is today for every 1 day of below 60 degrees that you will take from me, because as I love to say, this machine is not rated to operate below 60 degrees Fahrenheit anymore. Everything hurts. It's cold. I don't like it.
Yeah.
And I mean, if I'm hot, I can always jump in the pool. I can generally get cool. But
there you go. And you guys have Iggy Pop down there. So if it's good enough for Iggy Pop, it's good enough for us.
Anything good enough for Iggy is good enough for me.
And if you haven't heard it, you got to check out his song, Evil California. As much as I like and love living in California, it's a pretty funny song.
I'll bet. I saw Iggy Pop. It was the Orpheum, I think, in Boston.
Oh, wow.
And Jane's Addiction opened up.
Whoa.
Right before anybody knew who they were.
Was it like late 80s?
They were just like an opening band. And I was there to hear Iggy Pop do I Want to Be Your Dog.
No fun.
All that stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, and of course, so it was funny because, we're all like standing around in the back doing what you do. And Perry Farrell was just hanging out there, and you couldn't miss him because he had like the ankle length white dreads at that time.
Of course.
So it's like, wow, dude, that was amazing, because they absolutely ripped everyone's head off.
That sounds to me like, was that the Triple X tour? Because I saw the Nothing Shocking one, which would be the second
I'm
tour.
pretty sure it was, I'm pretty sure it was Nothing Shocking. It was like right after the album came out.
Oh, cool.
Because I had never heard of them, and so it must have been like late 88 or something like that.
I know I saw the same tour, but I grew up in Rochester, New York, and the opening band for them was Henry Rollins when he was doing I'm a Liar.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Great show.
Ra-cha-cha-cha.
Yeah. What is your first creative memory?
Yeah, I started really in graphic arts when I was very young. I mean, I remember...
Really?
Yeah, I remember drawing cartoons, copying Snoopy and stuff like that when I was like 3 or 4. Wow. Very young. Yeah, and for a long time, I thought that was going to be my path, because I drew and did comics and ink and all different kinds of media. Yeah. Oil paint and different kinds of stuff for really until I was about 12 or 13. And then this friend of mine wanted to, I guess it was 1980, Moving Pictures came out, and he was really into Rush, and he wanted to start a Rush cover band in which he wanted to sing, because he had he couldn't play anything. And for whatever reason, he decided that I should play drums, which I didn't play drums. I didn't play any instrument at that time.
Yeah, and you decided here's some really easy music to start with.
Yeah, that's exactly how, But this is kind of this is kind of been a sort of a hallmark of things in my life. It's like I don't know how difficult it is, or even if I do, I generally don't care. I just go, okay, and then I just do it. And by the time I find out, oh, this is kind of unusually difficult, I'm already, 3 years into it or something. It's like, oh yeah, I guess so.
So with your visual talents of drawing and illustrating, does that still affect you in any way today? Do you take part in putting the album covers together that you make, or any other aspect of your life?
Yeah, for sure. And in all of those aspects. Yeah. And I eventually married a very talented painter.
Yes. I have seen your wife's paintings. They are astounding. Yeah. Can you tell everybody her name so they can check them out? Yeah. My wife's name is LuAnn Dunkinson, LuAnn Dunkinson. And LuAnnDunkinson.com has a great many paintings and stuff for sale and that you can see. And she's in a lot of, shows, and she's been in like museum shows and many kinds of these sorts of things. Really beautiful watercolors.
Yeah, she's super good. And so, but yes, I definitely take a hands-on approach to the covers and the images and the fonts and the layout and all that stuff. I really always did. So that's, but yeah, so I started with art, and then, I eventually became a drummer, and then progressed into playing bass and guitar and keyboards. And I ended up going to school for that. And that's sort of how that all came to be.
Were there any visual artists other than Charles Schulz who inspired you to draw or to paint or whatever type of media you did?
Strangely, I'm one of the few people in my family to do this kind of thing. My grandfather was a like a touring accordion player.
Wow.
You know the joke, a gentleman is someone who can play accordion but doesn't, But I never, and my grandmother was a piano teacher.
Yeah.
But I never met either of them. They both died before I was born. And so if there was some musical talent, we all sort of agreed that it must have come from one of them, because no one else has really got that. But I was always into it. And so I have always, I was always kind of in the art classes and going to museums and stuff. Even when I was a kid, it was something I was super into. So
there wasn't any specific artist who inspired you?
Not way back then, no. I mean, that, of course, once I got into all of the art students in college thought I was completely insane, because for them, art history was like the class they didn't want to take.
Yeah.
And I was like sitting in on the classes on purpose, and they're like, you're insane. I'm like, no, I want to know this stuff,
Yeah.
And so, so probably Salvador Dali is one of my favorite painters.
Me as well.
In the, for what I'll call figurative painting, and for more modern stuff, I like Jackson Pollock.
Wow.
The splatter painters.
Those are two you can't go wrong with.
Yeah, I definitely am a fan. Someday, when I hit the lottery, maybe I'll start collecting, that kind of art.
Have you seen the movie about Jackson Pollock with Ed Harris? It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
The Jackson Pollock movie is a friend of mine who I met when I was younger, Jeff Beal. He did the soundtrack. That was one of the first big ones he did, and then he went on to do a lot of other ones. But yeah, that movie really encapsulates what an incredible and unique artist Jackson Pollock was. I love Dali too, and you're in Florida, so have you been to the St. Petersburg Museum of his work?
Indeed.
Yeah.
And we seriously considered going to the one in Spain while we were in Spain. But
I wish I could go there.
It was a little too far away from where we were at the time. But
the one in St. Petersburg, I think, has at least half of his work, and two pieces jumped out to me there. The Abraham Lincoln that was made out of the cubes. It is so big. Oh my God. And then
I had that poster on my wall for a long time.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites. And then he was one of the first artists to use holograms. There's that tiny little
Gala at the Window, actually, is I think the title of that painting.
So incredible, and done in the 70s, right?
Right.
All right. So you told me a little bit about your family, but what I would love to know is when you were growing up, were either of your parents creative?
No, definitely not.
Not at all.
No, not at all.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a whole long and fairly complicated story that I generally don't get into too much. My parents, my birth parents were not around very much. And generally when they were, it was not a good thing.
Right. But the good thing is you did obviously get some great talent passed down from your grandparents, right?
So it would seem.
Do you think creativity could be implemented in curing people or at least helping people with mental health struggles like depression or anxiety? Any specific insight?
I definitely am a fan of, art and music as therapy. Definitely believe in, and I have a number of friends who do that professionally, actually. I think it's effective and it's useful. Living in America, the education system is really leaves a lot to be desired, and it also, as you get older, they begin to educate you more and more from the neck up and kind of to one side. They want you to and it's not everyone is made to be a scientist or an accountant or whatever. Some people are dancers or creative types. There's a great TED Talk, Ken Robinson. In 2006, he did a TED Talk about education in general and how creativity is more important than ever in the modern world, and it's given less time and money and energy than ever in education. I mean, pretty soon AI is going to do everything for us, and what we need is the creative stuff that machines cannot do.
Right. And
that's not being taught, it's not being cultivated, and I think that's a huge problem in America and in the world today, because it's one of the things that makes us human, and we're not giving that enough love. So yes, I'm a big fan of the therapeutic applications of creativity for sure.
I also, on the flip side, I do admire two of my favorite artists, Peter Gabriel and Laurie Anderson, because they're using AI in ways where they are collaborating with it live, which I find very interesting. And I think, as with all technology, you and I are drummers. Remember when the drum machines were invented and then it put people out of work for a while, right? This is something that we're going to have to find balance with because it's not going away.
I agree. There are many things to unpack with large language models, and I don't particularly like calling them artificial intelligence because they're not. Because if they were, when you told them to do things, they would tell you no. No.
We haven't reached that point yet.
Yeah,
no.
I'm
like
not
2001, right, David?
Listen, monkey boy, you can do your own thing. I'm making art for myself, and you wouldn't understand it. And I'm not even going to show it to you. When that happens, that's artificial intelligence. Otherwise, it's just big, fast computers with big, large databases. There are many ethical concerns around AI, but that doesn't mean that it's not an interesting tool to use. Nuclear energy is a very interesting and useful tool, but no, seriously. I mean, it's, we were wrong about that. Actually, everyone was like, oh no, nuclear energy is going to kill us all. Right. Now it's burning carbon.
When you do these amazing albums that you do and you're writing the lyrics, do you find that helps you at all mentally, spiritually, emotionally, like going through the process of getting the thoughts out of your head and putting them to music? How does that fit into what we're talking about? Does creativity help?
I'm a big fan of an author named Neil Stephenson, which I'm sure you've heard of. He wrote Snow Crash and coined the term cyberspace.
Right.
It has a lot of just amazing, fantastic books. He actually wrote this thing about why he's a poor correspondent, because he says, authors are sort of expected today to be on Twitter and to be available for interviews and to do conferences and meet other authors and talk and answer emails from their fans and so on and so forth.
Right.
But it's kind of like being nibbled to death by ducks. And so he doesn't do it at all. He's just like, I do everything through my publisher and the manager, because otherwise, I can, if I have a week of uninterrupted 4-hour blocks of time, I can, bang out a good chapter a week. But if I have 2-hour blocks of time, I can't do anything. If I start working and I'm going to be interrupted, I can't do anything. If I even think I'm being interrupted, I'm going to be interrupted. And, so he talks about jealously guarding his creative space. And he said one of the main reasons to do that is not only because he wants to be the best writer he can be and generate great novels instead of a million stupid emails,
right?
That's his priority. And also, he said he discovered that writing fiction is critical to his own mental health, and that if he goes too long without writing fiction, he becomes very difficult and unpleasant to be around.
Wow.
And he doesn't want that. And I can definitely appreciate that. People ask me oftentimes, because I do this a lot. I mean, when we were working with Tony, one of my friends was there to offer moral support, and he mentioned to Tony and the group that, I was coming up with 10 songs like this pretty much every week. And they were like, wow, I just find that if I just take whatever the muse brings, whenever she brings it, and get it down, make a demo or record it or write it down, whatever it is, then she keeps coming back. And if not, or if I say, I can't do anything with this punk song, I'm going to just not, I'm trying to write a jazz album.
Right.
Well, then that offends the muse and she doesn't come around. But if I just do what comes, take what comes, then it just keeps coming and it, goes well. And again, if I don't do that, I've only once had a period of what I would call writer's block. It was kind of a long stretch where I just couldn't seem to do anything. And it wasn't fun. I didn't enjoy it. And I hope it never happens again because I'm just, it's a pretty important part of who I am.
Right.
And absent that, it's not good.
Prince passed away in 2016, and he left us with this vault of what they say is 8,000 songs. And I think he did what you did. I mean, he would just keep writing every day, and if it didn't fit the album, he'd throw it in the vault, and then later on, either he would add it to an album, or when he's gone, they would cobble these things together. So I think it's good and healthy to just keep working through these things. And also your point of making boundaries these days with technology. I recently interviewed my friend J.C. Gable, who's this great independent book publisher. He used to work for Pitchfork magazine, and he's saying these days it's so hard to be a journalist because you spend most of your day online and social media and everything, and it takes away from your creative time. So I think a lot of those people are struggling, and they need to create boundaries like you do.
There's another thing I want to mention on the subject, and that is any Boy Scout or sailor will tell you, if you don't know how to tie a knot, tie a lot. Right. And so,
that's a good one.
And I learned this. I worked as a photographer professionally for a while for Getty Images. And I noticed that as I did these things, if I took 100 photos, there would be one that was absolutely fantastic.
Right.
Way better than everything else. And then there would be 10 that were very, very good.
Right.
And then there would be 20 that were okay, perfectly serviceable, nothing great, but they were fine. And the rest would be junk for one reason or another, right? They just weren't, somebody blinked or there was something was not right about it. And I found that to be true in my creative, in all of my creative fields. If I write 100 songs, one of them is really great. Right. And then there'll be, and then there'll be 8 or 10 that are really very good. And then there'll be 20 that are kind of mediocre or whatever, they're just okay. And then the rest are just failed experiment or didn't really work. But I never know which ones are going to be which. Oh, and that brings up another point I want to make quickly about this. I turned out to be the worst judge of my own work ever. Things that I think are the greatest thing I ever did, nobody else cares about at all.
Right.
Doesn't even, just whatever, not interested at all. Totally unimportant. and things that I think are just like, oh, that was a throwaway. We had an extra hour in the studio, so I threw this thing together. And that sucker is the one that everybody loves every time.
I think that
I've had that
happens to a lot of people.
So many times. So I try and not put myself in between the art and the intended audience. It's like if I just make it and somebody else can decide if they like it or not, as long as I think it's good enough for somebody else to hear, then it goes, And only quite recently have I been, through working with Markus, really, have I been letting that go a little bit and letting stuff be a little more, like I'm generally inclined to sort of file off all of the rough edges until everything is perfectly smooth. And that I've found isn't always the best approach, because sometimes, in fact, oftentimes the first rough kind of thing is the one that has the most juice.
I totally agree. I read an interview with Lenny Kravitz that said he was recording an album many years ago, and he was in a car with a friend of his, and this friend's like, "What's this song?" And he's like, this is just this simple idea I made. It's not that great." And it turned out to be that song "Fly Away," which was the number one hit. And the same thing, like you said, right. He just did it last minute, threw it together. He's like, whatever. And they're like, "Dude, put this out."
Right. Yeah, he's really great.
He's one of those few musicians like Paul McCartney, Stevie Wonder, people that can play all the instruments and just make an album of equal value to the ones when he collaborates, Yeah,
that's quite the thing. I've gotten to the point now where I find it more entertaining to collaborate.
Yeah.
I can play enough of all the instruments that I want to use generally to, get the ideas across.
Yeah.
And in this, I have to say that brass and woodwinds are not among those instruments. I can make a noise on them, but that's about all. And I never cease to be amazed by people who can play like the flute or saxophone or especially trumpet.
Yeah.
It's like, that is a non-trivial task. Like, you have to, just to get to the point where you can make a sound that doesn't sound bad, takes a long time, or can take a long time.
But I think it's really cool how you have some people like Sting who grew up playing saxophone, and he is not by any means a virtuoso on saxophone, but he can write a part and then give it to someone like Branford who can just knock it out of the park.
Yeah, right. Well, that's, I sort of, this came up in my, I've worked as a software engineer, QA guy, and people have often asked me, "Oh, you're smart. Why don't you write code?" And it's like, besides the fact that I'm not really into writing code as such, I can do it and I have done it, but it's like, that's not playing to my strengths.
Right.
I can, my strengths are things like user interface, usability, and how people are going to use stuff, just something that engineers tend to not be that great at. It's like, you need somebody who can see what's intuitive and set the program up in that way.
Well, that comes back to the collaboration that you're talking about, right?
Right. Because I can hire somebody.
Yeah.
I can hire somebody who's twice the coder I am, is going to do it twice as good half the time. And that's a better use of my time, is doing what, play to your strengths. And so that's definitely proven to be true. When we were growing up, there was this idea that, you would get into a band with your buddies from your town, and you would, if you worked hard enough and stayed at it long enough, you could make it. And it took me an embarrassingly long time to figure out that that's not really so. Right. And that it was really much better to hire professionals to execute your vision, if that's what you're about.
Yeah.
Because, everything takes twice as long or 3 times as long and costs 2 or 3 times as much.
Yeah.
That was always like the first time I worked with Tony and them. We crushed it in like a day. I was like, wow, I would have spent months and untold thousands of dollars, and have done, in the past and come out with something that didn't even sound all that great.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I wish I'd learned this lesson a long time ago.
Do you ever have this happen? A lot of times when I'm composing music, I'm really excited when I'm doing it, but then I know myself enough that I go, let's sleep on this. And I may wake up and go, oh my God, that was way better than I thought. I also might say, wow, why is the tempo so slow? Or this song is not as good as I thought it was. Do you ever kind of sleep on it or shelve it for a while?
Not usually, because of the reason I mentioned before, where it's just like, I just get it done, just get to the place where all the parts are there. And there's also kind of especially in the last, 10 or 12 years or so, there's kind of a self-sorting process where I'll book a session and then I'll write stuff for the session, and I'll probably write sort of twice as much as I need. And then the more interesting or the better stuff seems to just kind of rise to the top. That's what gets recorded. There's a thing that happens in February album writing month, FAWM.org.
I don't know this.
Yeah, it's English. It's an English guy started it, and now people all over the world, probably about 4,000 or 5,000 people every year, kind of log into this site and post links to the songs, and you're supposed to write I think it's 14 songs or 35 minutes of music, something like that, in the month of February. And I found that to be really super useful and helpful. In fact, since I started doing it in 2016, those songs tend to be the ones like, well, I wrote, I wrote 15 or 20 songs, sometimes one a day during that month. And then those end up being the ones that a few months later I'll record at Dreamland or wherever. And so I've kind of gotten into this groove now of like, that's when I wrote the Stickman album. That's when I wrote and now I've gotten into the thing working with Markus where we do it while we're standing there, and I'll come in with just sketches. It's like, well, okay, here's 7 different tempos and 7 different keys, and we're going to use these as a starting point to come up, or maybe I'll have like a rhythmic idea or some kind of time signature map or something like that, and then write the music and then the lyrics kind of right there on the spot. And so that's a new way of working for me. I'm still kind of getting used to it, but it seems to be producing satisfactory results.
I think that's good, and I think it's like you're keeping the muscle going and in shape. You remind me of, I got to meet Edie Brickell many years ago through Steve Gadd, and she told me how one year she challenged herself to write a song every day. So she wrote 365 songs in a year. And I thought that was a fun, good challenge. And it's like you're saying, some of them might suck, but you know what? The fact that you're rapidly doing this consistently, I think is good for your brain and healthy, and also just you're doing your Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours. It's always going to pay off. Right.
Yeah, Eminem talked about that in some interview I heard where he's like, they were asking about it, and he's like, I pretty much never stop writing. I've always got a pen in my hand. I'm always just writing rhymes day and night. And he said, 90% of what I write is junk or never goes anywhere. But that's where I find the 10% that is like hitting,
Right.
You gotta and write it all down and then comb through it and take the gems. It's like painting for gold.
Have you ever used the creative part of your brain to solve challenges in your life?
Well, I don't think that there's a specific case that jumps out at me, but as a general thing, I think it's true that most people are making it up as they go along with their lives.
They mean imposter syndrome.
Yeah, and that's something I definitely struggle with.
That's a great answer.
Yeah, I definitely, and so, I try to lean into that. And I also, they say if you're doing improv comedy, you never say no or, try and block what the person's giving you. It's always yes and this other thing. Yes, right, and yes. And so I have found that that's quite effective, across the spectrum of human endeavors. If you say yes and go for it, all in, all the way, every time, you're going to have amazing experiences. And I've done not just music, but I mean, all kinds of things. If we were to get far into it, the bulk of my experiences in life really, add up to like, take me to your leader. You know what I mean? Because it's so weird. You did what? But you get into the groove of doing that, and suddenly it opens up this like plethora of life experiences that you otherwise wouldn't have had because you were willing to just say yes to it and
take a risk. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's something Tony told me that actually years ago. He said, because I was asking him, like, how did you really get to be such a successful session player? And he said, oh, that's easy. I started out and just said yes to anyone who wanted me to play on anything. And he said, I still do that. If I can do it, I just do it. I don't care where it is, when it is, how much it is, whatever. I just say yes. Because over the years, I've gotten smart enough to know that I don't know what's going to be a hit. Yeah. Things I think are, just like what I was saying before, things that I think are nowheresville become a huge deal. And things that I think are going to be a huge deal just go plop. You just don't know. There's so many moving parts to anything in life and in music that you just got to go for it, do your best with what you got, where you are, and generally it's going to work out. That's my optimism for the day.
Yeah, that's funny when you said that he was willing to play with anybody, anytime, anywhere. You probably remember this. He put out this great book many years ago. I think it's out of print, called Beyond the Bass Clef. And I'll paraphrase him there's a section in there where he says, if I die and there is a God, I want to play bass for him.
Awesome. Oh, yeah.
And I believe him. I believe him. He'll probably get it on the first
take. Yes. Well, that would definitely happen, because if I were God, I'd want Tony on bass in my band. Yeah.
All right. So for people that don't know, Andy is a musician, songwriter, author. And I always like to say the way we know each other, and it's through some mutual friends, and all these guys I've been friends with for a long time: Markus Reuter, Tony Levin, Jerry Marotta, Zach Alford, Pat Mastelotto, a really great, phenomenal group of musicians. And
yeah, they're really the best. It's amazing.
Let's get right into it with your music. I've been checking it out for the last couple months. I really love your two latest. One is called Masterpiece. One is called Perseus Calling. And if I have this correct, Masterpiece not only features you with your super awesome voice, but Zach Alford and Markus Reuter. And then Perseus Calling has Tony Levin, Markus again, and Pat Mastelotto. Can you tell me a little bit about these two of your newer albums?
I'm going to back up just a hair and say that, I've been friends with Tony's brother Pete since like the 90s. I ran into him. He was doing a McCoy Tyner tribute with Kenwood Denard on drums and Jeff Berlin on bass.
Good God, what a band.
Absolutely amazing. They were so good. At that particular place, there was no backstage or anything. So when they got done with their set, they were just hanging out.
Yeah.
So, of course, I start talking to them, and, you're Tony's brother. Oh, yeah, cool, awesome. Okay, whatever. So we've sort of been just acquaintances since then.
And where was this?
Then that was, I think it was SOBs maybe, or somewhere like that. It was in Manhattan, somewhere downtown.
Cool.
So anyway, flash forward to 2020, the whole world has closed up.
Right.
And I just saw this news story. Peter Gabriel canceled his tour.
Right.
And I was like, well, that means that Tony Levin suddenly doesn't have anything to do. So I was like, let me get Pete on the phone and see if Pete and Tony would do a session. So I got Pete on the phone. Hey, I see the world's closed up, and I was wondering, if you might want to do a session. He's like, yeah, of course. I'm like, okay, do you think your brother would be interested? Well, let me ask him. Okay, cool. Yeah, he's down. Well, who should we use, on drums? Well, Jerry Marotta lives right in town, and he's running this great studio, Dreamland, right down the street. Why don't we go there? So, phone calls were made. And at first those guys were like, who are you? You want to do what now? Yeah. And I was like, well, who's paying for this? And it's like, well, I am. All right, cut across, shorty, come on ahead. And so and then it was like, well, how many songs do you want to do? 2 or 3? And I was like, 10 or like 10 songs in 2 days. I'm like, well, I'm going to bring 10 songs and we'll just see what we get through. Because as since you've done some listening, you know that I've got a pretty strong sort of pop streak in my style that kind of, keeps things high and tight.
Yeah, and melodic. All your songs are very melodic.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. So anyway, so that's how it was. I sent him demos. I came in with the charts. We, my general approach to these things is, if you don't get it in 3 takes, you ain't going to get it.
Right.
Move on. So,
and let me just ask really quick, what is your main instrument that you compose on? I
started out playing drums and sort of started to become a guitar player, but as like many guitar players, I knew many other guitar players who were way better than me, and it was much easier to play bass and sing than it would be to play guitar and sing. And, it was just one of those things. So I ended up being sort of a songwriting bass player. And then I eventually studied classical guitar performance and composition in college.
Wow.
And so I had kind of a wide... I've had a bunch of phases of my music.
What college did you go to?
I went to Southeastern Mass University at Dartmouth.
Cool.
Before they got subsumed into UMass, and then I got my master's degree at SUNY Purchase, in Westchester, New York. Yeah, so I had a lot of really great teachers, and especially once I got to Purchase, I was going into the city and studying with guitar players like Jimmy Tunnell and Steve Kahn.
Oh, love Steve Kahn.
Yeah, and I studied bass with Jeff Andrews from the Yellow Jackets for a while, and I've had a lot of good fortune in my life to meet, play with, and study with some absolutely amazing musicians. I studied with John Harrington, the guy from Steely Dan, another guy from Steely Dan. I know Steve Kahn did a bunch with them too. And so anyways, that's how I met and got playing with the Levin brothers and Jerry Marotta. We did.
Okay, so you've got about 10 songs, demos, and you're going to head over to Dreamland.
Yep. And so that's what we did. We just went, did kind of 3 takes of each song, and like it usually goes, it was the second take pretty much every time.
Yeah.
The first one's like, we're not really sure what we're doing here. Okay, we're just about got it. And then third take be like, well, second take was better. Okay, good.
And were you guys playing live for the recordings?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah,
and I think I saw yesterday, I was checking out some of your videos. There is one video that was filmed at Dreamland, right? Because I remember seeing all 3 of those guys in the video. That was really cool.
Yeah, that was super fun. And it was really kind of almost an accident, it was my buddy who had kind of come with me for moral support, took a bunch of cell phone video that eventually did make it into that. Into that. So, so we did several records with those guys, only one of which has come out yet.
And which one is that?
Because then Budget Soul is the one that has.
Yeah, I'm looking at your Bandcamp right now. Okay. Yeah, that one sounds great. And I've got to say this. I listened to a little bit of all your albums, and one thing that's consistent, 3 things, is the sound quality is astounding. The performance and the songwriting is very consistent from all the way from like 601 to Heidi, Paper Heart, and then these 3 latest ones. Really impeccable quality.
That is really just so lovely of you to say. Thank you. It's funny when you're doing this sort of thing, the parameters for success become cloudy. It's like, well, I didn't sell 1 million records. I didn't have a hit. I didn't, it's like, what are we doing this for? The business has changed so much. what's the marker for success here? And,
right.
And from my point of view, it's like, well, did I get into a room with some absolutely world-class musicians and have an amazingly fun time making a record that I'm proud of?
Right.
I did. Well, then high fives all around,
Yeah, that's the most important thing as an artist, right?
Yeah.
You've got to funnel this stuff from your brain into the physical realm, and you definitely killed it on all 6 of these.
As the guys from Fishbone said, if you're not having a good time, then you're wasting your time and your money here tonight. So,
that is what I got to say. That's one of my favorite bands. I followed them, I used to go see them in Ithaca in the late 80s. And then I worked with this organization. We did a fundraiser with them a couple of years ago. And man, they sounded just as good. Astounding
they're
band.
So good.
And a lot of people don't know that they double on horns too. Just amazing. And,
they're super cool guys. I studied with Norwood for a while too.
Really?
Actually, the bass player.
Yeah, I don't think he's with the band anymore. I think he just left.
Yeah, they had a falling out finally, which is really unfortunate. But
yeah, well, when we did the fundraiser, that was one of the last shows with him. And I got to tell you this too. A while ago, I took a student of mine loves Tool, and Danny Carey's his favorite drummer. So I was like, hey, you probably didn't know this, but Danny's got this jazz band that plays at a place called Baked Potato. And so I take him down there. Danny does an astounding job. Love his band. I took my student up to meet him and everything. But halfway through the show, I see this guy walk in the door, finely dressed, Afro-American guy. And I'm like, oh my God, that's Angelo. So Angelo walks in, not only sings 3 songs with the jazz band, but then pulls out his saxophone and just blew everybody away. And then he gets up and leaves.
He's an amazing dude and such a creative spirit.
Yeah.
Really.
One of my favorite bands.
He's a really good painter too, that not everybody knows that.
I did not know that, but I have seen the wonderful documentary about them.
Yeah, he did a show actually here in Jacksonville.
Wow. Get back to your Dreamland experience with Jerry and Pete and Tony.
So I think that they were, initially like, okay, well, we don't know what we're in for here, but okay. But I think because of the way that I approached it, because I was, internally the whole time I was like, don't screw up, don't screw up, don't screw up. Like the whole time I'm playing, I'm like, I do not want to look like an idiot in front of these world-class musicians. Like, please, pretty please.
Right.
If you've ever done any kind of conducting or anything like that, or even just leading a group, it's like, you got to like follow music and give the cues. And that's it. If you listen to it, it sounds so good that you get lost.
Right.
So you have to really like count and just like, it's like this weird compartmentalization of like, my hands are doing this thing I'm telling them to do. And I'm, counting the measures and following my own chart, keep my place, But seriously, it was like nerve wracking. But apparently I didn't let on. They didn't see me sweat. So they're like, okay, this guy can play. He shows up. He plays good. We get paid. Everybody goes home. What's not to love?
Yeah.
And I know that these guys, when you get into that rarefied air, a lot of times the artists will be, I'm going to say, challenging to work with. Right. You know what I mean? Yep. Like, I'm sure, you're a musician and, you come in with some guy and, you don't know what you're going to get until you get it. Right.
Right.
It's not like, oh, Paul Simon's coming in for a record. You need to make a record. It's going to be great. Right. Yeah. So like this guy I don't know is showing up. And so, but I think we all kind of, hit it off personally and professionally. And it was just kind of, okay, this is great. We went out for dinner and had a fresh hang. And the next day I, did the vocals and whatever guitar overdubs. And, so we started making a habit of that, once a year, whether we need it or not, we go and make a record together. And
wow.
I knew that Stickmen were coming to Jacksonville, and I bought my tickets because the venue is pretty close to me. And I, being like I am, I was like, So I was looking at their schedule, and I'm like, oh, look, they have a day off in between Atlanta and Jacksonville. Yeah. And I know they're going to come here that next day. So I was like, well, so I called up Tony, and I'm like, hey, do you guys want to do a session while you're here? And, the profit margins are razor thin on a tour, right? You only got to miss one show or, have a flat or whatever to get kind of hosed, you know?
Right.
So I thought, here's a freebie, you know, you roll into town, show up at my local studio, we throw down some songs and go out to dinner, and that's it, you know? And then the next day you have a show. And so they were like, yeah, we're down. So it was kind of the same thing. And in fact, I sent them 12 songs, and Tony was like, just so we know, why don't you put these in order of importance? It's like, we're probably not going to get through. I mean, 10 songs in one day when they're all like, you know, I'm not going to say that the Budget Soul stuff was easy, but it was all in 4/4 anyway, you know.
There you go.
So I knew that it was like, if we're going to have a bunch of songs that, you know, as soon as they said yes, I was like, oh, crap, because I'm the dog that caught the car. Now, what am I going to do, you know?
Right.
Okay, I better start writing. And I'm like, okay, no two measures in the same time signature in a row now. And, you know, how many modulations can we get in here? But it's really a different band, very much so. You know, the Levin brothers, Jerry Marotta band, soul, blues, funk, R&B kind of vibe to it, you know, Steely Dan meets the Eagles or something.
Right.
And whereas the Stickmen are really kind of this very unusual progressive rock kind of thing. So I'm like, I don't want to bore these guys and have them be like, what is this, you know?
Right.
And that really did kind of work out.
And do me a favor, tell everybody who's in Stickmen, in case they've never
Stickmen, yes. Pat Mastelotto on drums, Tony Levin on bass, and Markus Reuter on touch guitars.
Right. So how'd the session go?
It went really good. I mean, it was a little nerve-wracking because, you know, it was just a different band.
Yeah.
You know, I had listened to the Stickmen a lot, but I'd never actually seen them. I didn't know Markus. I had not met Pat. So anytime you're coming into, you know, a new situation with people you don't know, you're sort of, okay, how's this going to go? You know, and
right. And in one day,
and there's
right?
Always, right. And there's always this whole kind of like, you know, anytime you go into the studio, even if it's like a top shelf studio, you still are like, well, why isn't this working? Which cable's broken? What battery do you need to replace? What's wrong with the channel? You know, there's always something. Not everything's in your studio is broken. You just don't know it yet, you know?
Right.
So we had a little bit of like, we spent a little more time than I probably would have picked working on like the headphone mixes so everyone could hear, but it's like, you have to do it. So,
yeah.
But anyway, you know, they of course just crushed it. And there's one thing I do want to get into, mention about Markus is that associating with Markus has progressively, pardon the pun, kind of freed me from the way that I was working.
Right.
Because, you know, when I first started working with these guys, and especially Jerry was like, you know, this is not cheap and I want you to have a good time. So it's probably best if you really have your ducks in a row. You know what songs you're going to do, you know how they go, you know how to play through them. You've got charts that are accurate for everyone and all this. Like you want to be ready with what you're going to do before you walk in the door so that you're going to come out with something that is satisfactory.
Right.
And that was the way I was used to working anyway. That's my normal MO with pretty much anything is, you know, to be kind of locked down into what I'm doing here, because once, you know, you're standing there and the microphone's hot, you got to deliver. It's not like, oh, well, we've got $1 million budget and we can be here for a month screwing around trying to figure out how this part goes or what we want here or what have you, you know. And so working with Markus has really freed me from that because he knew how the parts went, but how the music, the sections went, you know, he knew like what the chords were and how the time signatures went. But not having a touch guitar, I didn't really have any parts for him. I told him, do whatever you feel like doing, you know, crush it. And he exceeded and continues to exceed my expectations anytime we work together because he's just such a fountain of creativity. It's amazing
to watch him. He's a brilliant guy and also very funny and very compassionate.
yeah, super nice and charming and yeah, brilliant and talented. It's been a real pleasure to meet and work with him. So the session went fine and produced Perseus Calling. And even for that, I didn't have any lyrics or anything really. I had the music.
Right.
Basically the time signature maps and kind of the chord changes. And that was pretty much it. And we just did it to it. And then the next day I came back. Well, that night I listened to the roughs and wrote a ton of lyrics. And the next day I came in and just did it.
So with that one day, you recorded all the music with the guys, right. And then you came back in by yourself and did all the lyrics.
Yep.
What studio was this at?
In Jacksonville, the studio is called Endangered Wise Men, and it's run by a guy named Rick Grice.
Oh, cool.
It's another talented and lovely individual. I've done a lot of work here with him. He's done a lot of mixing and stuff for me. I am pretty prolific. I don't say that as confidently as I used to, because Markus is probably one of the most prolific people I've ever met.
Oh yeah, I just had
he's
him
not,
on
He's
on
not
here
recording
and,
music all the time, but when he is doing it, as he mentioned in his interview with you. It's like,
yeah, he does the live composing like Mike Garson does. That stuff is just amazing.
I'm like, how are you doing that? I guess when you've done it for long enough and you get used to it, you can just. I can make stuff up, but it sounds a lot better if I have time to work on it.
He's a very stream of consciousness guy. So first you did Budget Soul, then you did Perseus Calling, and then what led you to work with Zach Alford on Masterpiece?
So, we did the Stickmen record in March, and I was really very happy with the results. And so I knew that everyone was going to be in town for the Three of a Perfect Pair prog rock fantasy camp. I guess that's the right. I'm not sure what they call it, but
that's a really fun thing.
But they do this camp every year in August in around Woodstock, where Pat and Tony and Adrian Ballou kind of get together and they do master classes and jam sessions.
Had you been to that before?
I have not. I really want to go, and there's a bunch of these kinds of things, because there's other ones. O'Teal Burbridge does one with Tedeschi Trucks,
right?
Folks, and there's a whole bunch of them. But when it gets Steve Vai did one, with his whole group. But the thing is, once you get done paying for all that with the travel and the accommodations and all that, I'm not a super people-y kind of person anyway. Yeah. So the cost really amounts to about the same cost as if I were going to just go and make a record with these guys.
Right.
And so it's like, if I'm going to, do one of those, I'm going to do the one that's going to produce a result that's conducive to my creativity.
Right.
Well, it's selfish. And I'm sure it's a mistake. I probably, if time and money weren't any objects, then I would do all of those things. But if I got to pick one, I would rather record, especially since COVID. I've been performing as a drummer, a bass player, a guitar player, a keyboardist, a singer, really my whole life. And I was playing a lot, but when COVID came around, it was like, I just couldn't, and nobody could do it. Everything was closed. Nobody was, and even if you could do it, I wasn't keen on like, hey, come see me play and maybe get sick and die. Like, it wasn't a thing that was really like,
what's the problem?
And
right.
So I, as a result, kind of all of my live performing avenues and opportunities kind of dried up, and I have yet to really restart that, because there are many problems with the music industry. The gigs pay the same as they did in the 70s and 80s, but everything else costs 3 times as much, at least. So it's been getting harder to justify the amount of work it is to load up all the gear and go out and play for 3 or 4 hours, until like 2 a.m. And everything's where in Jacksonville, everything's very far away. It's bigger than Los Angeles by area. And so you can really, it's like, oh, where's the gig? Oh, it's an hour and a half each way. So, you start driving an hour and a half each way and playing for 3 or 4 hours. And suddenly it's like, how much is this hourly? And again, I've really always been more interested in writing and recording. Steely Dan had the greatest gig in history. It's like, yeah, we just go into the studio and work until we're tired of working. And then we put out the album and then we start over.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, that's great. So anyway, that's all of that. So the story about the camp, when I tried to put together another session, there was a flag on the play. Pat had already booked his tickets and was going back to Austin like right after camp ended, like the next morning.
Right.
So he had already made all his travel arrangements for him and his family and his other people. And he couldn't do it. And Tony was like, man, the camp is a tough week. I'm coming back from tour like the Sunday, and then the whole week it's all 12-hour days.
Right.
He's like, so when that's over, the first thing I want to do is nothing for a few days.
Understandable.
And Markus was like, I'm totally up to doing it, but I'm only available that weekend. So I couldn't. So I was like, well, if I want to do this, I got to do something else. And actually, Jerry and I were going to do something. And so as it turned out, he was also not available at that time. So it was Tony who said, well, let me give you Zach's number. He's really good. And he was really good, which, I mean, if Tony Levin tells you a drummer is good, I'm going to go ahead and say he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah. And for people that don't know Zach's playing, probably the 3 biggest things are B-52s, David Bowie, and then I saw him a couple of years ago here with Psychedelic Furs, which I think is his current gig.
Yeah, he's definitely touring with the Furs. He's also, I know he's worked with Bruce Springsteen and Nine Inch Nails.
That's right. He did the one Bruce album without the E Street Band. That was actually pretty cool.
Yeah, he's another one of these guys who, when you start drilling down into his credits, it's like, wow, dude.
Actually, when I was listening to Masterpiece, I love his drumming and he's so versatile, but the drumming on your album really made me think of what he did on David Bowie's Earthling. Very frenetic and hyper, really choppy, great drumming.
Yeah, I was really into it. We had such a good time. And so that was the...
and where was that recorded?
We did that with a guy named Scott Petito at his studio.
He's produced so much good music in that studio. It's ridiculous.
Really amazing. And he was so fun to work with, and he's an amazing musician as well. So I actually had it on my list to get him to play bass or do something on one of these projects soon. That was the beginning of, Markus said, because of the nature of the timing, I'm not going to have time really to work on stuff. So we're going to have to just make it up as we go.
Right.
And I was like, okay, well, that's way outside my comfort zone. So yeah, let's do that. Because I mean, that's talk about being out over your skis. It's one thing to make a bunch of music and okay, I'll write the lyrics tonight and come in tomorrow and record them, but we're going to make the music up on the spot. Really?
Yeah. Okay.
And so everything you hear on that album was one take. It was the first take, completely improvised.
That's incredible.
I really wasn't really sure that it was going to work until we were there doing it. And it was like, oh, okay. And it was such a fun time too, because I sort of always wanted to do that because it felt like, oh yeah, well, we've got the budget. We can just make stuff up and see what happens,
right.
Even though we didn't have any of that. But, we would do a take and was that sound good? Okay, let's go in and listen. And we would go in and listen and, you should add some percussion. Okay, Zach, go in and do some percussion. Okay. And then, well, here are all the percussion toys. Okay, here's the mic. Okay, go. And he would just do a take. And it was like, how was that? Great. Well, we need some Mellotron. Okay, Markus, go play some Mellotron. Okay. And he was like, how's that? Great. You know what I mean? And I played either bass or piano.
Yeah, that was my next question. Who's the bass player?
Yeah, no, I was playing where there was an actual bass. It was me using Scott's Sadowski Jazz, but also Markus played bass on a couple songs using the touch guitar because it's a kind of an extended range instrument,
right?
And so, yeah, that was really quite the experience because just having the freedom to do whatever you want was kind of new and exciting. It was like, wow, this is really amazing.
It sounds like all three of those albums are so diverse and different. That must have been exciting to learn different ways to compose outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah. I tried to get the beat guys, but it was not happening. They're going to be they're doing so much already. They're releasing a live album and the DVD, and I think they're going to Japan or the East somewhere.
Let's be honest too. That was a relentless tour. I cannot believe how many dates they did.
I'm so glad too, because I've never bought front row tickets for anything in my life until that came around. And then I was like, I don't care what it costs.
Yeah. I think for a lot of us, and I'm guessing you're close to the same age as me, I was too young to see the 80s Crimson. And I'd waited my whole life. And it was so exciting to see one of the first shows out here in LA. What an incredible band. Yeah,
they were really, I was expecting a lot, and they exceeded expectations in every way.
Yeah. I still can't believe on Industry that Tony was playing the repeated figure with his right hand and playing bass with his left hand. Even that part, I was like, good God.
Yeah, well, that's our man, Tony.
Yeah.
He is the greatest.
All right, so you have these 3 albums that we're talking about, but it sounds like you said the ones you did at Dreamland with the Levin brothers and Jerry, there's a lot more material you haven't put out yet. What is your plan for that stuff?
Oh, man. Really, doing releases is tough, because you have this whole thing. It's like, well, you put all this effort into, it's trying to find a new path forward in the industry now. For decades upon decades, you would make an album and then you would tour, and then you would make an album and then you would tour, and you would service radio, and you would do all this, there was just a path, and everyone did.
And you could make a lot more money with royalties back then.
Right. Although I have to say that standing on the shoulders of giants, it was actually Joe Satriani who was one of the first people talking about, hey, as it turns out, you can just become your own publisher. And I don't know, he did some article or something in Guitar Player or whatever like that. And I was like, yeah, okay. So I, got an intellectual property number from BMI, and I formed a publishing company and did all that. And absent album sales, that has been providing some income, which is nice because, use my own music in every Instagram post and every, all kinds of things. And other people do too. And so it's not a lot, but it's certainly better than nothing, which is, if you're doing album sales, people are not buying physical media like anything like they used to do.
It seems like one of the only ways to make money with music these days, unless you're already established like a Sting or a Sarah McLachlan, it seems like a lot of my friends and professional musicians are using Bandcamp because that's one of the only ways you can actually make a profit.
Well, the nice thing about Bandcamp is it allows streaming, but it offers you a path to purchase what you hear if you like. If you listen to a song twice on Bandcamp, you try to listen to it a third time, they're going to nag you and say, it looks like you've listened to this song several times. Can we suggest you pay $1 for it?
Yeah.
Or whatever. They at least give you a path to try and do something, whereas Spotify's like, you didn't get 1,000th plays, so we've taken all your money. Great.
I think that.
I can't wait till they go out of business. Honestly, it's the most unethical thing.
It's kind of scary, but I think I do what a lot of people do. I'll use a lot of streaming services. And for instance, if the new Tony Levin album comes out, I listen to it. And if I like it, then I'll buy it on vinyl. I want to hear it before I buy it, just like in the old days. But,
like you would. I mean, that certainly makes sense.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. And I'm kind of the other way. You know, like I use Prime, Amazon Prime as my streaming service.
Right.
Because I'm already paying for Prime just to get the free shipping for all the other stuff I need from them. And then I use them to like stream music. But by and large, especially like, for example, 90% of those listens are music that I bought on vinyl and cassette and same. CD already. So they are mine to begin with. And those artists have been paid 3 times.
Yeah.
Actually, they probably haven't been paid at all, but their record companies have been paid 3 times.
Yeah.
But if it's new music, as often as not, I find it on Bandcamp and I buy it on Bandcamp and I stream it on Bandcamp, and that's that. You know, that's almost all of my new music purchases go through that. And it's you know, I think it's a pretty decent model. I mean, I hope it continues to work. Bandcamp and its parent company Songtradr are both privately held. And I really wish that we, the musician community, could get it together to buy those companies so that...
That's a great idea.
Because, I mean, if they were publicly held, I'd be buying shares every day.
I just finished teaching as a music teacher in an elementary school and middle school. And the hopeful thing that's going on is it was actually my students that got me back into vinyl. They kept buying me records for like Christmas and things like that.
Nice.
And then I went and got a turntable again. And I'm finding, you know, they like to make mixtapes on cassettes. They're getting back into physical media. So I think the future is hopeful because a lot of the kids I worked with and helped them make bands, and I still do this with them, they like bands that really play live. You know, they want to go into a studio and play together live, almost like a jazz record. So although it's unpredictable right now, and it seems like there's not a lot of hope, I'm seeing a lot of good signs that I think things are going to go the other way because people are not going to stop liking music, and they're going to understand if they want to support their bands. They got to do what they can. I think it's great to go to a gig and buy a T-shirt and buy an album by these guys, at least support them in that way.
Yeah. And, you know, it used to be not so very long ago that if you wanted to make a music video, you know, you were $50,000 just to walk in the door. You know, it was a non-trivial, the most bare bones thing you could do was a non-trivial investment, which also had no path to monetization. You know, you get played on MTV and you get the royalties if they play you every hour or whatever. But ultimately that was, you know, it for that. And now the bar to making interesting music videos is very low.
Yeah. I mean, unless you're somebody like Taylor Swift, you're not going to have the budget to do, you know, the stuff that we grew up with in the golden age of videos, you know, when MTV came out.
This is something I'm fairly proud of, actually, because the music videos that are up there now, I think are fairly high production values.
Right.
And I brought that stuff in for much less than you would think.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of people can do, you know, we've got Billie Eilish and her brother Phineas, you know, starting out recording in their bedroom and going on SoundCloud. I think the money is still there to be made. It just happens differently, and people are going to have to adjust, and people are going to have to be creative to figure out how to survive as a musician or an artist. And you're doing it for the essential reason, because you're an artistic person and you need to express yourself. Anything that happens beyond that is great and icing on the cake. But at the end of the day, like you said, if you think of something in your head and you actually execute it well and you're happy with the result, right there, that's rewarding.
Well, I think Frank Zappa had this right. You know, he said many years ago, I'm going to tell this story, I hope I get it right. When asked about this, he said, if you can quit, you should quit. You know, because he said, we were doing a gig with Duke Ellington, And Duke Ellington came up to me behind, backstage and said, "Hey man, can you loan me $20?" And Frank Zappa was like, "Duke Ellington needs me to loan him $20? Oh shit, I'm in the wrong business, And these are not new problems. They're just kind of manifesting in new ways. But
yeah, and even back in the day, I remember in the 80s, I would see somebody would come to town like a Chuck Berry or a Pee Wee Ellis, and a lot of these guys would just travel by themselves and hire whatever band was in town that they heard was good, just to keep it simple and keep the cost down. All right, so I want to go through a few of your favorite musicians here, and when I tell you their name, I want you to give me a couple things that you like about working with them. So let's start with Jerry Marotta. What do you like about working with Jerry and his drumming and all the other instruments that he plays and his production values?
Jerry is absolutely fantastic. And, really all these guys, I guess when you reach a certain level of excellence, it's like indistinguishable from magic. We sit down and, how's this go? Okay. And then he'll just play the exact right thing, exactly what it needs. Perfect. Like I've said to him many times, it's like, how are you doing that? You just know, you're a drummer, so you know that, there's sort of, dump, dap. You know what I mean? Like you're doing regular rock and roll, but he can just come at it in a way that just like maximizes the groove every time.
Yeah.
He's not playing a lot. He never overplays. He never underplays. He always does exactly the right thing for the song. And Tony does that too. It's amazing to watch. It's you're playing all the same stuff. And actually, best compliment I ever got in my life, Tony Levin told me in the hearing of others that my bass lines made him sound good. And I had to sit down.
Wow. That's a nice compliment.
Wow. Because I can't think of anyone else I've ever heard of who can come at a song they've never heard before and play exactly the right thing.
Yeah.
Exactly the right thing. I think I've seen him maybe, I don't know, in 5 albums or something we've done together, 4 or 5 albums, that he's maybe, there's a note in there I want to fix. Just give me the fifth measure of the second chorus. There it is. Okay, go. And then, okay, that's it. The thing about Jerry, I think even more than his talent, is he's just a sweet and nice individual.
Yeah.
Like he's, it's funny because he sort of comes across, especially if you don't know him, he's kind of a big guy and, and he can be a little gruff. It's just the way that he is, but he really is just sweet and generous and charming. You know him, so you know.
Yeah.
And one thing about working with musicians, and I've said a lot of times, it's nice to be great, but it's better to be nice.
Yeah.
And I've noticed and maybe this is just my experience, other people maybe have different experiences, but for me, the better the musician, the nicer they are.
Yeah.
I've met a lot of guys who were,
I've
met a lot of guys who were good musicians that weren't very nice.
Right.
That weren't humble, that weren't generous, that weren't kind, that were just kind of mean. And I will not name names, but you know what I mean?
Right.
But when you get these musicians like the ones that we're talking about that are absolutely phenomenal, I think without exception, the ones that I've worked with have all been super down to earth, really nice, chill, funny, charming people, in addition to being great musicians. So I don't know, make of that what you will.
Something I wanted to say about Jerry is I've been bugging him for a couple decades now to do a solo album because this. He's not only a great drummer, he's really good at bass. He's a great piano player. And what a beautiful voice he has. I've heard him do sessions where he just layered harmonies. And I think that guy, he's got to put out his own album. He's just too good. And people need to know all the different things that he can do beyond drumming.
I did know that he was a multi-instrumentalist, but I actually have never heard him sing, I don't think.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, well, he was touring with, not only Peter Gabriel, but Hall & Oates and singing with everybody.
Well, again, the humility, right? These guys, for all that they're fantastic and accomplished, they're not much for bragging.
Yeah. All right. So how about Zach Alford? What do you like about his drumming and working with him?
Zach was super no nonsense. He was just also like Jerry, super easygoing, just kind of, hey, what's up? Okay, cool. How's this go? Yep. Okay. It's cliche to say, but I feel like his playing really speaks for itself. You used a good word. He was kind of frenetic.
Yeah.
Which was perfect for the style that's, what I was going for in that session. But also there were we did a couple ballads on that record, and as a drummer, it's not easy to play really slow.
Right.
And swing, playing slow and making it swing is like, hey, that's, we're rushing, we're dragging, so, and he was, his time was really spot on. But he's another one who, it's like, once you get into this level of excellence where you're working with these people, it's like, plus, when you're like a touring musician, it's like, okay, so in addition to whatever rudiments you're doing, sitting there on the bus or whatever, you're playing 3 hours a day, every day.
Right.
Once you're doing that level of constant performance, the engine's warm.
It's like breathing.
All the little fine motor control muscles are limber, and they're, it's all good. So he also had a knack for doing just what the doctor ordered. And we actually, I haven't spent nearly as much time with him as I have with Jerry. Jerry and I have worked together a bunch now, and also hung out socially a bunch. We've gone out to dinner a bunch of times, and what have you.
Well, another thing I like about Zach, though, is he's so good at playing with loops. I mean, if you haven't heard the David Bowie album Earthling, that was produced by Mark Platty, and he did these crazy drum programming things, and he's got Zach playing with those on the album. But then live, it was even better. He just really knows how to lock into loops and play around them and just have fun.
Yeah, and we unfortunately did not take advantage of that skill, but I definitely have it on my agenda too. I would love to work with him again. He has been too busy because, as you mentioned, he's been on the road with the Furs, and I don't think they're going to stop anytime soon.
And they still sound great. That's another band that sounds just as good, if not better. How about a little bit about the one and only Pat Mastelotto? So
I did really only get to work with Pat that one time. Although I have to give him props, because when I went to the show the next day, he very unexpectedly gave me a shout out from the stage. Oh, look, it's Andy Toomey. We just had a super fun time recording with him, and got a big round of applause. And I was mortified, but also very much appreciative. Yes, more gratified. Right. He's another one like Tony and Markus too, actually, with a very understated and dry kind of sense of humor. They're hilarious, but you got to be like paying attention. It goes by quick. He's a very sharp guy, and I was absolutely shocked because I was asking him, like, before the session, do you want me to write down, notate some of the kicks or whatever, something just so you. And he was like, nah, don't bother. I'm not much of a reader. And I was floored. I'm like, really? Because for his amazingly good and like on it, for all these super weird, constantly shifting time signatures, and it's like, yeah, no, I just feel it. I'm like, wow.
Well, don't forget the one and only Buddy Rich couldn't read, and arguably the best drummer that ever lived.
There you go. There's another guy who was super nice to me. I went to see him when I was just starting to play drums. He played at Berkeley. They did a show, him and Louis Bellson. And he was like, signing autographs after the show, and I was like, went up there with my little drumsticks, and I was like, and he was just super. I mean, he didn't talk to me for a long time, but he was, oh, what are you doing? You're studying drums. Good, stick with it. Practice your rudiments. But he was just a super, super nice guy, and he has, of course, he had a reputation for being difficult to work with, to say the least.
Right.
But I think that's a common kind of a trope, where if you are like Robert Fripp, people like to say he's difficult, and I feel pretty confident in saying that. People say he's difficult because he knows what he wants, and he will have that.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's like, but if you have an artistic vision and you're very firm in your artistic vision of how you want things to go,
right,
people who don't want to be told what to do or whatever can be really uptight about things like that. It's, oh, he's difficult.
I mean, I would say something similar. I was also lucky enough to meet Buddy a few times because he would come to Rochester often. And he was equally nice to me. It was he just turned it around, kind of like Steve Gadd does with my students. He's like, oh, what kind of music are you into? That's great. Don't give it up. Keep working hard. And I also agree with what you said. I mean, think about Buddy and how long he was playing and the phenomenal musicians he worked with. He expected the best, but he also gave the best. So I can understand being frustrated if people aren't giving you 1,000% when you're doing that yourself. So I can understand that.
Yep. Well, and also, it's all fun and games, but being a leader is no joke, man. You got everybody's looking at you to take care of every little thing.
You got a target on your back.
You're a leader, right? So everything's your fault. Every problem that anybody in the band has, well, why didn't, I can imagine that, well, I don't have to imagine. I mean, I've been a band leader many times, and I know that musicians can, even at the high levels, can sometimes be a sort of a flaky bunch. I mean, certainly it's no secret that many jazz musicians have had their wobbles with various kinds of substance abuse and so on. Right,
or lots of other things.
Or who knows what. Everybody's got problems. They got a wife or a girlfriend or two that, whatever. There's always something.
I would like to read a quote. Robert Fripp, he once said, linguistic philosophers continue to argue that probably music is not a language, that it is in the philosophical debate. Another point of view is to say that music is a very profound language. What do you think of that?
I am going to come down in favor of music as a profound language because in my own experience, having traveled extensively in places where I did not speak the language, and I'm pretty good at languages, and I've been in many places where the guitar or a drum or whatever would cut right through whatever, else was going on and allowed a certain kind of direct communication that you can't get in another way. So I feel like it's a language that transcends language. It's another way of expressing emotion that in many ways is purer and clearer than words because, well, I don't know why, but it seems so in my experience.
You're making me think of in the 80s, there was this kind of trend or movement. A lot of musicians that I liked, like Peter Gabriel or Cocteau Twins or Dead Can Dance, they started doing music where instead of lyrics, they would just sing phonetically. Massive Attack did this too. And I always thought it was brilliant because you can play this music around the world and people are just going to pick up on the emotion. They don't, you can go to another country and if they don't speak your language, it doesn't matter because you're doing this big, passionate, exuberant performance that you're just singing your heart out without words.
David Byrne, the singer from Talking Heads, wrote a book called
How Music Works.
How Music Works. Thank you.
One of my favorite books.
My brain was going, your brain on music. I'm like, that's not it. But he talks about how, in his process, that oftentimes, they're doing music and they just do the music. And then he will go in to the vocal booth and do that. He'll emote as intensely as he knows how with no, just phonetically, no words. And he finds things that then come out of that, he'll listen back and extract, meaning from it, or find the words in it. And I've gotten a lot of mileage out of that, especially working with Markus, because we have these really short windows of time where it's like, I have the opportunity to do whatever I'm going to do here in the next 48 hours. And that's it.
Right.
Like, maybe I can, come up with something, an overdub or whatever, like after the fact. But that is by far and away the exception rather than the rule in working in this way. And it's produced some interesting results. And sometimes I think, I go back and forth. I'm a little on the fence about it. Sometimes I think, well, if you're there, there's an immediacy and a certain kind of guilelessness to this improvisational approach that is like more direct somehow.
Yeah.
And then other times I'm like, yeah, but almost invariably on subsequent hearings, I find myself, it would have been better if I had said, I should have used this word there.
Right.
I always sort of second guess myself after the fact. So there's there's kind of a gradations of improvisation, composition, spectrum.
But I think there's so many different ways to write songs. If I think of David Bowie, I mean, look at, he did the oblique strategies cards with Brian Eno, where they would just select a card and do what it said.
Thing to do.
But then,
have you ever done this?
Oh yeah, I've got a deck of them right next to me. It's great. I actually got to take an online course with Brian Eno in January.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, he taught us how to compose very quickly. He would do things like, look at this image, okay? Write down 5 words. You are only allowed to use G and C major. All right, I want you to record a song into your voice memos of your phone and upload it to me in 20 minutes. He's like, go.
Go.
Yeah. But for me,
a great time.
It was really fun. He obviously was a really funny, witty guy. But after working with him for a whole month, now I compose most of my music on my, I've got a Boss looping machine that has like 5 tracks. And a lot of times I'll put a couple drum tracks down, play them live, and then play some keyboards, and then dump that into Ableton and then start messing around with it. But that initial idea, I didn't think about too much. I didn't get caught up in, I could use 50 tracks right now. I just,
right.
I just kind of put a timer on and did it as fast as I can. But what I was saying about Bowie is you got him doing that, and then you've got albums like The Next Day or Ziggy Stardust where he came in with them pretty much written. And there's a guy that he really inspires me because he would write songs in so many different ways. There wasn't always one. With the last album, Black Star, he came in with these rough demos, but then he hired a jazz band. And let's see how far we can take it out,
Right. Yeah, he had something that is so rare. And you do find this, but he was as unpredictable as it's possible to be for an artist.
And that's why I loved him.
Like there's not a lot of guys who, you buy their new album and you truly have no idea what you're in for.
Yeah.
Could be, Mongolian throat singing, could be,
I do love that music.
15-piece jazz band, and those could both be on the same album. You don't know what and that's, and that's pretty rare. I mean, you get high quality writers and stuff. I mean, there's a long list of them, Paul Simon and Sting. And, I remember there were a few concerts that you can go to. Blondie was another one of these, for me anyway, where you go to the concert, every song is absolutely kick-ass.
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty rare for any artist to not have some filler or something that you just, it's okay, or you're not so into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just like, wow, every word to every song this guy played for an hour and a half. Like, that's just not very common, you know?
Well, I think with the people that are prolific too, like Prince, who I'm a big fan of, he often would put out an album that's not what I expected or wanted. And I was like, ugh. But then 2 years later, I was like, I love this. So
that's right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Same thing with Bowie. Do. Sometimes I go back to albums that didn't catch me when I was younger, but I was like, I mean, a great one is Sting's The Soul Cages. I remember when that came out. That's not what I wanted, but as I got older, I realized what a beautiful album that was.
Well, and that's a funny thing, you know, it's David Lee Roth said, you know, my responsibility as an artist is to maximize my vision. That's it. You know, like, I am not here to write hits. My job is to bring you my imagination writ large. And I try to keep that in mind. I mean, you know, maybe for some people that might be a strange messenger, but I'm a pretty big fan of Van Halen, not Van Hagar.
Same.
Although to be fair, I don't think that Sammy Hagar was the problem there. I just don't think it was I didn't find that to be a good match.
Well, look, I mean, there's so many people that like different versions of the band. It just comes down to, it's not like one is better than the other. Which one speaks to you? And for me, David Lee Roth, not only did I like his singing and adventurousness, his humor, just hilarious on top of it. And by the way, if you haven't heard Bill Hader do an impression of David Lee Roth, you got to go look it up.
We'll have to look that up. Well, you know, I mean, since then, you know, like Chickenfoot,
right?
And you know, their whole,
that's Sammy's band with Chad Smith, right?
Yeah. I mean, he's a great singer.
Yeah.
And I just didn't really. There was something about I don't know. There was something about it that didn't really go for me. Like the David Lee Roth as a lyricist, you don't know what he's talking about most of the time, but you know he means it. You know what I mean? There's kind of and there was a little bit of a kind of a honey baby, sweetie darling kind of pop sappiness to the Van Hagar stuff that just wasn't. And I really did try. I mean, I tried when they came out, and I not so long ago was like, I'm going to give this all a fair shake. I'm going to listen to these records and, you know, try and find, because they were certainly more successful with him than without. Yeah. You know, and
well, that's what I said. Look, I mean, Van Halen has left us so much music that everybody will find something they like, you know, whether or not they want to hear David Lee Roth or Sammy Hagar.
Right. And I can see why some people don't like him. I mean, I get it. You know, when you're a cartoon character like that, there are some people who are just like, oh, get off the stage.
Not everybody wants to hear a guy that goes on safaris in the jungle and comes back and sings Just a Gigolo, but some of us do like it.
Yeah, right.
You brought up Tuvan throat singing, which I'm a huge fan of. And if you haven't heard of it, check out Tony Levin did this project called Goatika, which, if I remember correctly, it's Gotika. And these guys are just jamming with a really incredible throat singer. So if you're into that stuff like I am, Mongolian music, got to check it out.
Cool. I will for sure give that a Google search.
Actually, now that I look at it, I'm sorry, it's Goatika.
This is apropos of nothing, but there's a Mongolian metal band that plays on traditional instruments.
Yeah.
Have you heard of this?
Yeah.
I can't think of the name now, but I very much enjoyed their music. They were definitely.
Tony was the first person that told me about the Tuvan throat singing. He was telling me how they can sing two notes at once. And then, you know, this is about, I don't know, 9 or 10 years ago. I had a whole bunch of Mongolian students, and they were like, can we learn about Mongolian music? I was like, oh, yes, we can. So we got deep into we got deep into the traditional stuff and the modern. Not for everybody, but man, I love that music. All right. Well, listen, before we go, what can I help you promote? If people want to check out your music, where is the best place to go? how can they buy your music, how they can support you? Where would you lead them first?
I am quite fortunate in that if you Google my name, Andy Toomey, ANDYTOOMEY, I'm like the whole first page of results.
Yeah.
And so, I always send people to Bandcamp because Bandcamp, as I mentioned, offers a path to buying a song for $1 or an album for $7 or $10 or whatever it is. I think there's $7.
I noticed that your website is connected to that too. Like when you click on music, it takes you right there.
I have a link tree too and whatever, but I'm on all the streaming services. So my name brings me up first, and all of these albums are available on, despite my complaints about Spotify and other streamers. It's still, it's there.
You're pretty easy to find. That's what you're saying.
Yes. And one thing that's a little funny, this was probably a mistake on my part, but I use one of the music distributors, DistroKid.
Right.
And so they have created a YouTube page that's just like a picture of the album.
Right.
And all the songs. And so my YouTube link that has my music videos on it is different than that.
Right.
And I never did find a way to connect those two together, unfortunately. But I think if you search YouTube for my name, I'm the one that the one with my videos comes up first.
Yep.
I think it's actually at the Andy T13 or something like that.
Right. And is it true that you have also written 2 books?
That is true, yes.
Give me the titles of those for everybody to check out.
Yeah, so both of these are available on Amazon on my author page, which is also Andy Toomey. The first one was A Musician's Handbook, 365 Daily Thoughts on the Art and Craft of Music.
Whoa.
It's kind of a longish title.
Contemplation there.
Yeah, and so this came about because I begun writing, some essays on things that I had learned, and I was trying to, again, think of ways to pass you're an educator, and I've had a lot of students over the years, and I thought, let me, write down some of these things I've learned, because I, as I mentioned, I've a master's degree holding composer, so I spent a lot of time thinking about and learning about the art and craft of music making. And so once I started getting a lot of these, I was like, this would be a pretty good book. And then I was like, well, I'll do one for every day of the year. And then, it's like a daily affirmations book or anything. You can open it to any page for that day and have your thought, or you can read it in a row and whatever, it's, and I try to, be useful and funny by turns. Things have changed now a little bit too. When I was coming up, there wasn't YouTube. You couldn't learn how to play a song from somebody would show you how to do. It's like you had to find a teacher
I remember
who was able to do this. And this was a non-trivial effort. There were a lot of books out there, but which one?
Do you remember I would get Modern Drummer magazine and they would write the parts out. And I remember a couple times they came with those flexible records. I remember there was like a Dave Weckl. It was like an insert you had to pull out and be careful not to fold it, but then you could listen to it and read the notation.
Yes, that was right.
That's what it was like.
So, yeah. So, just to pick on one random thing, it took me sort of a long time when I was first starting to learn to play at like 12 years old.
Yeah.
To learn to tune my guitar. You know what I mean? That's a thing that is tough for beginners.
Right.
You don't really know what it's supposed to sound like. You're not really there. And an electronic tuner, especially nowadays, is like $10. It's like, get an electronic tuner.
A free app on your phone.
On your phone, right. Use it. And things like that, or just little stuff. And it's just like another thing that holds back a lot of beginners is the fact that it takes a lot less pressure to hold down a note, to hold down a string on the guitar such that the note will sound. You're like, they're strangling, and it's just like, use the least amount of pressure. Never lift a finger unless you must is another good one. Nice lazy guitar player trick. It's like, oh, you don't, people be flailing around with their fingers. It's like, so stuff like that. And then the other book is Mastering the Art of Lyric Writing. And so I wrote a series of essays in a similar kind of vein, where it was like talking about the different kinds of rhyme schemes and formal structures, and then kind of examples of those using my own lyrics from the albums. So it serves the dual purpose of being a compendium of the lyrics, which now, I don't know, I've got, 6 or 7 more albums since that came out a few years ago. But
wow.
But it's kind of fun and interesting. I think that it's because there isn't a lot of material about that. If you want to learn how to become a lyricist, it didn't seem to me that there was a lot, how to write a song. It's like, but okay, but what's the, how do you really do that? And so that's what I was thinking about when I did those. And so, yes, buy my books and music so I don't starve. Pretty please.
All right, Andy Toomey, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure getting to know you, and let's make sure we get together and do this again soon, hopefully in person.
Yes, excellent idea. Thank you so much.